All right, now, here we go. Yet again, we're hearing about a mother who has killed her own children. I want to know, how does this happen and why? Let's get started. I want to say this as clearly as I can. It's not as though mothers killing their children is some kind of a trend. It's about mental illness, which we're going to discuss after you watch this. Shocking news out of New York. Horror on the Hudson. A mother plunges her minivan into the river, killing herself and 3 of her children. It's not the first time. We see tragic stories like this over and over. Susan Smith, Andrea Yates, and more. All mothers who killed their kids. Enough. I need you to understand how this happens. What can possibly make a mother kill her children? I'm really hoping we have a conversation here that is of an order that you just aren't going to get anywhere else on television, because people are asking why, and nobody is really answering that question. So joining me are Dr. John Sharp. He is a psychiatrist on the faculty at Harvard Medical School, and Stacy Kaiser. She is a psychotherapist and a mom, so she's going to give us some insight. CNN's Deborah Fayrick is in Newburgh, New York with the latest. Deb, tell us what's going on there.
Well, Dr. Drew, what we can tell you, this was a 25-year-old mother of 4 children, the youngest being 5, 2, and 11 months old. We spoke to a number of neighbors. They say this was completely out of character, that she was very quiet, always very attentive and loving towards the children. She was very polite, sort of kept to herself, never sort of reached out to members of the community. But there had been a tragedy recently, a little girl across the street dying in a fire, and she donated money for a fundraiser. So still very active, very aware of what was going on. We're getting some clues from the daycare center. Apparently, the mother had taken the father off the pickup list to get the children when they were done for the day. She said that she was filing some sort of court order against him. We're also learning, apparently, that yesterday she picked her children up early from that daycare center, and the landlord who we spoke to said he had been called twice to change the locks on the apartment in the last 6 months. So clearly something was up. Police were called to the home because of some sort of domestic dispute at about the same time that this tragedy was unfolding. When they got to the apartment, it was empty, but moments later, the 10-year-old boy showed up at a firehouse saying that his mom had driven the family's minivan into the Hudson River with the 3 children. Somehow he managed to get out of that car, swim to shore, and a passerby saw him, took him to that fire station.
Deb, thank you so much. What a tragic story, but and yet a story of survival and resilience. This one young boy, 10 years old, finding his way out of a car underwater, making his way to a fire station, getting the help of passersby. It's just an unbelievable story. But I want to focus on this mom. People can't understand, can't get their head around how it's possible that this could happen. Dr. Sharp, you're a psychiatrist. This is mental illness, is it not?
Very much so. I mean, the fact that people can't relate normally to what's happening shows you that this is not a normal thing that's happening. I mean, this is really psychosis or severe drug abuse, something like that.
Well, let's define for people what psychosis is. How would they know if someone is psychotic, and what is a psychosis?
Well, psychosis is really when you snap and you're out of touch with reality, where reason doesn't normally apply. And in her case, maybe we were seeing some signs of that by her withdrawal. She was under a lot of stress, apparently, and she didn't seem normal. You know, she wasn't writing on the walls in blood. She wasn't doing things that would make you cry out for help instantly, but there were subtle signs, and I think when we see that, we have to take it very seriously.
And what are the conditions that can lead to psychosis? So it would be depression?
Depression, whether it's unipolar
or bipolar.
Or bipolar.
Postpartum depression or psychosis, right? Some of these stories we alluded to were women who were sort of postpartum in that first year and became psychotic and depressed and killed their children.
Postpartum psychosis, by the way, usually occurs in the first few weeks or months. It's a psychiatric emergency. You think your kid is the devil or something, and you just go crazy. In her case, it may have been an unfolding psychosis that developed as a result of all the maybe depression and stress that she was going through.
Here's a little video clip of what neighbors had to say about this tragedy.
She didn't really talk much. She was very quiet, but I mean, she didn't bother anybody. She'd sit outside, and nothing that we would expect of this. I would never have expected her to do something like this, especially to her kids.
And this is what we always hear when the neighbors are interviewed, when someone's kid picks up an AK-47 or the mom goes and kills their kids. Part of it is because when you're in a normal state, Stacy, we can't get our heads around this. You're a mom. What do we do with this? How do we help people understand it? How do we get our heads around it?
You know, I think it's very true that this is one of those unique situations, very much like you're both talking about. And what I always say across the board, whether there's mental illness or not, is when a mother suffers, the children suffer. And so what I'm seeing here is a lot of suffering. And because these neighbors didn't know anything and people around her don't seem to know what's going on, it makes me think that she isn't reaching out to people. She doesn't have a good support system. And whatever is going on as a parent, when something is going on in your life, you need to lean on your support system and get help.
Are there signs that people can look for, I'm asking this of either of you, that someone could know trouble is coming?
Absolutely. What you're looking for is a change in their normal behaviors. You're looking for an adjustment in their activities. Here's a woman who suddenly started telling the school that their father couldn't pick the child up, that a person who's withdrawing, a person who isn't communicating with people like they used to.
And yet, though, we couldn't have gone from those kinds of clues to saying, oh my gosh, be careful, she's going to drive her minivan into the river.
Right, but we could have asked her about how she's doing. We could have said, you know, we're seeing some subtle signs in your behavior. Tell me more about what's going on. You can try to sleuth out by asking very basic questions what someone's mental status is. And if it's not jiving with what you would expect it to be, then you can point them in the direction of help.
And I think that's the next thing for people at home, which is, how do you know when it's time to call a doctor? How do you know when it's time to call the police? And this is sort of general, this is sort of probably applies to most mental health kinds of circumstances. When do you call the doctor?
You know, we give people so many rights in this country, you know, as a parent, as an individual, and we try to say, you know, let them work out their own concerns. But I think as healthcare professionals, as friends and neighbors, we really have a responsibility to act on our feelings. So if you feel like something's just not right, ask someone or have them go for help, or if need be, call 911, have a protective call, a safety call be made.
So people are very reluctant to do that, though. Stacey, they sort of stay out of other people's businesses. They don't want to tell people how they should parent or live their life.
Absolutely. You know, in some ways, we're all looky-loos. Everybody's willing to rubberneck when there's an accident on the freeway, but when we really see something serious going on, we don't want to get involved. And what you can always encourage a person to do is talk to their doctor. A lot of times they feel safer, and the doctor is going to tell that person, you know what, you need to call the police, you need to go to a hospital.
I feel so crazed, though, when I'm on this program saying, well, ask your doctor, ask your doctor.
They can call you.
Yeah, well, this is what they end up doing, because the healthcare system here is so inadequate that many people certainly don't have primary care. They go to urgent care systems and they get milled through. There isn't what we imagine to be good healthcare available for so many people in this country. But let's try to outline for people, when do they call the cops? I mean, when should, just in a brief, like 3 things that absolutely you should be calling the police for? Dr. Sharp?
Danger to life is the most important thing.
So I'm going to hurt myself.
Absolutely, or I'm going to hurt somebody else.
But people go, oh, they're just crying for help. They're just acting out again. Don't assume anything. Call the cops.
I think that's right. You can say, you know what, based on what you told me, I've got no choice but to make sure that your safety is ensured.
Hurt somebody else?
Hurt someone else for sure. And the third thing would be if they really sound to be out of touch with reality. So if someone is saying crazy things in your estimation, that's another reason.
I'm hearing voices. I'm going to hurt somebody.
I'm seeing things. I'm getting messages from the TV. I feel like my child's the devil.
The FBI is looking after me.
I feel hopeless. I've got no choice at all but to die, but to hurt somebody.
And I just want to throw in here what you know, a lot of us bystanders or support system people do is we underestimate things. We second guess ourselves. If it doesn't sound right, it may not be right, and it's worth a phone call.
Ask for help.